Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome not just a very, very senior professional from the corporate world, but someone who has made a transition to the social sector, decided to give back from Mumbai, India, Mr. Ujwal Thakar. Ujwal, welcome to the show.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Ujwal is the partner and co-founder of Ujwal Impact Advisors. He's the former chief executive officer of Pratham, one of India's largest and most impactful NGOs. He's also served as the CEO of GiveIndia. So, Ujwal, before we talk about what is happening in the NGO sector, tell me a little bit about your own journey and what was your motivation to move from a career in banking to the social sector?
Interesting question. One of the things that has guided my life is serendipity. Right from the beginning of my career, I didn't intend to become a banker. I was trying for the civil services. And it so happened that anyone who appeared for the civil services exam appeared for the state bank exam. I even forgot about the date of the state bank exam, and in the morning friends came, so I went for the exam and I was the only one who qualified.
Amazing.
And I didn't qualify for the civil services. So banking happened serendipitously, if you will. There are several instances I can quote.
Yeah.
The next move also to Standard Chartered Bank was serendipitous. I was setting up SBI Capital Markets, which again is a story of where I joined the National Institute of Bank Management to do a postgraduate program in bank management. And I was part of my dissertation work doing work on leasing. And the reason I chose leasing was I somehow wanted to get into what was then called the merchant banking division of the bank, and didn't have access to it unless I had some corporate experience. So I thought leasing is a new space. At some stage, investment banks will get interested in it. So maybe that's my path. And it so happened that a new chairman came to State Bank of India. And the first time a non-banking chairman, a guy called D.N. Ghosh, was a bureaucrat. Now the bureaucrat wanted to establish himself as a banker. And so the one route he chose to take was to set up an equipment leasing company. And at that point in time, equipment leasing was so new that nobody knew what leasing was. So one fine day in the afternoon, I'm having coffee and I get a messenger saying the chairman wants to see. Now, you worked in the ITC. The chairman doesn't want to see underlings till they become deputy managing directors or executive director.
Correct.
I didn't believe it. I just said, okay, ask him to wait. Till 5 minutes later, my boss came fuming, saying, who the hell do you think you are? And then to cut a long story short, I went up, the chairman and managing director both were waiting for me. And they said, young man, do you know something about leasing? Now, that's where my grabbing opportunity part comes, another characteristic of me. So I said, quickly realized that these guys know nothing. So what I know, I'm the king. So for the next 45 minutes, I gave them gyan on what equipment leasing market was. To be fair, I knew something about it. It wasn't that I didn't know, but I knew that they knew much less. So with the greatest confidence, I told them that we should set up a subsidiary. And that subsidiary, because leasing generates a lot of depreciation, should have a revenue stream which should come from the merchant banking business, which I wanted to join. And they bought that idea. So I ended up setting up or going to the Reserve Bank for an application for getting the approvals, etc. And as a part of that exercise, when we were setting up SBI Capital Markets, I said, look, the culture of this organization has to be different from State Bank. We should have no clerical staff here. So I said, let me recruit executive assistants who are secretaries.
Right.
I went to a search firm. And the search firm, after chatting to me, said, hey, I have a vacancy in Standard Chartered Bank. Why don't you join? So that's how.
Amazing.
And series of such things have happened to me.
Yeah. And clearly, you seem to have enjoyed everything that you've done because you, as you said, you grabbed the opportunities when they presented them. But after such a lucrative career in banking, SBI, and then you were telling me Standard Chartered and some others, what was the motivation to move to the social sector?
So, I mean, the plan always was to do it at 55. Uh, and I had no clue on what I wanted to do in the social sector. Motivation was life has been kind, so give back. That was all the thought in my mind. I had no ideology, I had no ideas on where I wanted to go. Which is when again serendipity struck. I was setting up the retail business for BNP Paribas. And 10 days after its launch, the bank asked me to shut it. I had hired 400 people. 4 people were actually joining on the day the bank closed. Wow. And the reason the bank shut down was the chairman of the bank had committed 400 employees to analysts. And in France, sacking anyone is extremely difficult. I mean, France is the Bengal of the 70s. You couldn't sack people. So here I was asking for 100 million euro of capital and had 400 people and had a long gestation business. I mean, my business was going to make profits in year 5 till when 115 million euros of capital would have gone in. The cost of closure was 30 million euros. Easy decision for the chairman, terrible decision for me. So that's when I decided I'll bring forth my plans of moving to the development sector. And serendipitously, the day I decided that, Pratham advertised a role for CEO. The day BNP closed was the day Pratham ad through McKinsey came saying we want to hire a CEO. That's how I applied and I got the job after 10 interviews that paid me 10% of my last salary. It was good because at some level there was disgust. At some level there was this huge idea of giving back to society, which was always there. It just got crystallized luckily.
Fantastic. And then once you moved into the social sector, you have focused a lot on fundraising for NGOs.
Right.
So my question for you is, what are some of the core elements for an effective fundraising strategy for NGOs? And that's an area that a lot of NGOs struggle with.
That's true. One of the first things that you need to get correct about fundraising is the narrative that you're building.
Right.
I mean, what is the problem you're tackling? Many times NGOs are confused about what they have to say in a fundraising document.
Right.
So it begins with the problem that you're solving. What is your theory of change? What is your intervention model going to be? And what is the impact that you're going to create? Now, this many people think is strategy, but it's actually a part of the fundraising pitch that you have to make because whoever is giving you money needs to know what is the change you're bringing. It's about inputs, it's about outputs, it's more about outcomes. And most people don't realize that. So the narrative, building emotion into the narrative is critical because end of the day, all customers are driven by emotion. So how you build emotion into the narrative is as important as the narrative, as what I just talked about, which is how you organize your presentation.
Yeah, that is true. And clearly, what is important, as you are saying, is storytelling.
Absolutely.
And I'd love to get some perspective from you on what goes into crafting a compelling story that will resonate with donors. And if you can give me an example, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So we used to have a fundraiser in the US, in Pratham, a guy called Yogi Patel. And Yogi Patel told this story every single time. And at the end of the story, he cried. And the tears were genuine. And this is the story. The first thing on the story was a shoe. Then he began a story to say, look, I was born in Gujarat in a lower middle class family. The first time I wore a shoe was when I had to go to college 100 miles away. And my neighbors donated that shoe to me. And then I did my graduation. And finally, I got admission to the US. Again, the community came together and gave me not just shoes, gave me the thing. And here I am today addressing all of you guys, giving my own money and asking you to give money. This is what education did. And he would genuinely cry at the end of each presentation. And I've heard him do this 25 times. The tears were genuine. So the feeling was right from the bottom of the heart. And it impacted. And it created the stories of importance of education in the lives of ordinary. And then the appeal was, why don't you help educate a child?
Amazing. And just following through with the same story that you were telling me, how does one build trust with donors, especially in a market where transparency is a very big concern?
Yeah. So transparency is the key to donor relationships. I mean, I mentioned earlier emotion, but more importantly, the donor has to trust you. And where does trust come from? It comes from a few things. One of them is governance. What is your governance structure? Who's on your board? Who's your CEO? Who's your top management team? Your website should clearly focus on these. I mean, it is not usually appreciated the importance of these. Because any donor, the first thing he will do is to go to your website, to look at your financials, to see how good they're or how transparent they are, how much they're revealing. Then they look at your board. The board is bringing you surrogate credibility.
Yeah.
And then they will look at the founders and the founding team and all of that. So one element of that is trust. Building trust is what you say in your website, what you say in your communication to everyone. The other element is, what are you measuring? Right? You're all about creating change. So how are you measuring change? How is that reflecting in any communication that goes out of you? Because ultimately the high value donor, the corporate donor, the foundation donor is funding change, is funding the solution of a problem. So you need to be very clear on what your inputs are, what the outputs are, and what are the outcomes. And all those, I mean, it has to be a mix of qualitative and quantitative data that you present to them. How many beneficiaries there? Now, for example, Educate Girls, whose office I'm sitting in and whose board I chair. The objective of Educate Girls is to put children out of school back into schools. Now, easy to measure the number, so many thousand girls we put back. We've actually put back 2 million girls back into schools in Bimaru states, in the worst states in the country. But is that an enough outcome? I mean, the girls might come back to school and go away again in the next 15 days.
Right.
So one of the outcomes that we are measuring is retention in school. The other outcome is their learning levels. So you have to predefine those so that you have your donor partners aligned with your thinking. And it's easy if you understand what the donors expect. Otherwise, people are very confused about what they want to say. They think about saying things which the donor wants to hear, but without clearly thinking through what the donor may want to.
Very interesting. And Ujwal, what kind of strategies would work best to engage with high net worth individuals for their philanthropic activities?
I mean, if you look at the latest Harun philanthropy report in the country, which Bain brings out along with Dasra, the population of Indian high net worth individuals giving is growing rapidly, which is a very good sign. Otherwise, the levels of donation from Indians was very low compared to, say, a developed economy like the US. Now, what is the motivating the high net worth donor to give? It's again this sense of gratitude. Life has been kind to me. I want to give back. The very reason why I moved to the development sector is what is moving most high net worth individuals to do this.
Right.
Some of them may have a more strategic reason, saying that if the country's development increases, my profits will grow up. That is also a reason in some cases, but minority of them. Most of them is a feeling of giving back, gratitude. So you have to play on that emotion. What is it? So explain the whole development seen to them. What are the big problems the country faces? Is it education? Is it livelihoods? Is it health? Is it something else? So as a good fundraiser, you should be the philanthropic advisor to these guys. To not just pitch your own organization to them, but to pitch the sector to them. Once you build that trust, then you talk about what you're doing, what you're the problem that you're solving, how you're solving it, why you're unique, and build that relationship. It's like any relationship management. I mean, no different from a corporate bank's relationship manager or a retail bank's personal banking manager. You build that relationship, you gain trust, but to gain trust, you to create value for the donor.
Very well said. You know, I had the opportunity, Ujwal, of serving on the board of Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, for 8 years. Yeah. And I often observed that Americans are the biggest givers of their wealth.
Yes.
Do you see that happening now in India with so much more prosperity? We still haven't probably reached a stage where we'll say, okay, 95% of my wealth will be given away. Yeah. Where do you see this heading?
It's definitely, the trend is growing hugely. I mean, if you look at the Ashoka University, yeah, it has been almost completely funded by first generation.
Correct.
People who made their money in the last 10 years. And that's a very healthy sign. And they've raised 1,500 crores with a clear objective that we want to transform education in this. So more and more such collectives are going to happen. After Ashoka University happened, Plaksha University happened.
Yeah.
Other things, other collectives are happening. Earlier collectives never happened. People did their own individual thing till Ashish Dhawan and company came and created the Ashoka. Now that as a model is growing. So people will solve the big problems coming together. Provided you have a leader, a leader who can motivate, who can inspire, and who puts his money where his mouth is. I think Ashish put in 40 crores of his personal money to start with, and then collected people who gave between 10 crores and 250 crores is the latest donation that somebody made.
Well said. Well said. My next question for you is, how important is impact measurement in fundraising? And your own company is Ujwal Impact Advisors. And how should NGOs present their own impact to potential donors?
Impact is actually the reason why NGOs exist. I mean, it's so critical that if they were not creating impact, they have no business to exist. What are NGOs doing? They are solving a societal problem. So when you're solving a societal problem, you need to measure.
Correct.
And impact is nothing but the measurement of the success of your solution. So any donor, small, big, or large, would want to know what is the impact that's created. Now it has to be a mix of qualitative and quantitative.
Correct.
For example, in Educate Girls, we have given the number that 2 million girls will put back into school. This is committed to our donors. But we will also have to give them qualitative data on how many of those girls are actually retained in school, how are they performing in their classes, what is the next stage of their evolution. So all that is very, very important. And today donors are getting more and more sophisticated. It's no longer kindness philanthropy. It is strategic philanthropy. People want to bring positive change in the universe, which is why they're donating.
Yeah, well said. The other big donor is really government.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you that how can NGOs effectively secure and manage government grants as a part of their fundraising strategy?
You know, one of the challenges of working with the government is taking money from them. The minute you take money from the government, there are 100 audits, this, that, the other. Then there's the problem of corruption, which NGOs don't know how to tackle, and it's good that they don't know how to tackle. So one of the ways of working with the government is to improve their efficiency. You spend your own money, you raise your own money, but do things which will improve the efficiency of their investment. So it's like actually adding 20%, 30% to government spend. which is what most NGOs are doing. My advice and Ujwal Impact advisors to all my mentee organizations is you have to work with the government. There's no escaping that because they're the largest creators of social good. But don't take money. Raise money outside, help government to become more efficient.
Very interesting. So I have time for two more questions, Ujwal. My next question is, what are some of the key components of building a sustainable fundraising model that ensures a long-term financial stability for the NGO?
That's a tough one, but very few organizations, I have to tell you, have really achieved it. I mean, I'm fortunate that Pratham and Educate Girls, both with which I'm associated, have cracked that problem. But they would be less than 1% of the organizations which are stably there for the future. Now, to answer your question, there are 3 or 4 kinds of donors, and you need to get the right mix. One is the foundations, both domestic and international. International foundations are more liberal in their giving, but the government of India is suspicious of international foundations. So therefore, I don't advise anyone to make that a large component of their resource base. But then you have CSR, which again has a lot of constraints because there are many guidelines which come from the government. This should be this number, that should be that number. But you need to have them because it's a 30,000 crore pool of funds. So that's a big chunk of where money is being raised. Third is high net worth individuals, which is a growing pool and which will hopefully become very big in the next 15 years. You already have people like Azim Premji who have committed more than 1 lakh of crores to. How do you accelerate that pool is one. And finally, the retail donor. The advantage of the retail donor is that you get free money. In the sense, there are no constraints tied to that. They are giving you money to do what you think you need to do. And you need that innovation capital. So the innovation capital should come from the retail donors. And the mix of the other 3 will create your long-term funding strategy. Now, one of the things people say is create a corpus. But corpuses by definition are inefficient.
Correct.
Because you are putting in 100 crores of money and getting a 6% return on it and spending 6 crores a year for your sustainability in the future. And if you spend that 100 crores in this year, your impact will be so much more. So that dilemma you have to settle somewhere. So what is the right amount of corpus? And I have determined that as 6 months of working capital. If you can raise enough for 6 months of working capital and you're an organization worth its salt, in 6 months you will be able to raise enough for.
Well said. And my last question to you, Ujwal, given the vast experience you have, first as a banker and now, supporting so many NGOs, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want a lot of NGOs to take away from your experience and from our conversation?
The first lesson is be clear about what your narrative is. What is the problem you are solving? And how do you want to present it to the world? Most NGOs are not clear on that. NGOs are do-gooders. I mean, people jump into the fray, do good, but they haven't thought through like a corporate or a startup on what the long-term vision is. They just see a problem, they start working on it and gradually grow. So first thing is building the narrative. The second is measurement. I mean, once you build the narrative, how are you going to measure it? So critical, as I said, you exist because you're creating change. And you're creating change which needs to be measured. So how does your monitoring and evaluation look? That's definitely the second one. The third one is your fundraising strategy. Because for you to survive, you need cash to come in month on month on month. Very few organizations have revenue models. Everyone is working on grant capital. So have a very clear strategy for fundraising, which is dovetailed with your business strategy. The two can't be different.
Right.
So these three would be my top mantras.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And on that note, Ujjwal, and your three wonderful lessons: be clear about your narrative. Second is figure out a way to measure what you are doing. And third one is make sure fundraising is critical. And you did give us some guidelines that 6 months working capital is a thumb rule that you have developed. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. I loved your story about leasing and how you really went about getting leasing into SBI capital markets and built your whole career so beautifully. Thank you for talking to me about NGOs and all the challenges and opportunities that NGOs face when it comes to raising funds, and how you are supporting so many of them to be able to raise funding. Thank you also for speaking to me about the importance of government grants. And yet your view is that work with the government, but don't necessarily take too much money from them. And what finally you said was, which was so important, is that Indians now, high net worth individuals, are beginning to donate and contribute much more, which is a very positive step in the long run. Thank you for speaking to me, and all the very best to you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.